It was the same one.
Okay, I mean, like, it's like definitely behind. This was also like that.
I'm Shannon.
Hi everyone. Hi Devin. Hi, so you can all just take your seats. We're gonna get started in just a minute. So just to do some quick introductions, my name is Devin. I'm chair of the MC.
Devin. Nice to meet you, first time.
I'm the vice chair for education, and I will be helping Devin chair.
So just the way that this is going to be structured is first we will have the UA presidential debate between our two presidential candidates. And immediately following the debate, we will transition into a Meet the Endorsers event. And that is an opportunity for any representative of an endorsing group to meet all the candidates, UA, Pfizer, for any position they'd like, and figure out who they're going to endorse in the coming days. So in terms of today's structure, Elizabeth is going to be asking questions during the debate itself. So we have some pre-screened selected questions that we'll start out with. And then after that, we'll move into open forum where anyone in the audience is invited to ask questions. So in terms of the more specific structure, we'll begin with 2 minutes of opening statements from each candidate. Then we'll transition into questions. We'll alternate which candidate will answer each question first. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. And then at the end, the candidate who responded to each question first will have 30 seconds to just make any clarifications or rebuttals. And then we'll alternate, obviously, who's starting first. Additionally, all questions from the audience need to be addressed to both candidates. So it needs to be something both candidates can answer. And Elizabeth and I do reserve the right to strike any questions that are not deemed to be fair to be able to answer by both candidates. And then afterwards, at the end of questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give a closing statement. And we're going to be very strict on time. I'm going to be keeping time, and no one will be able to go over the allotted time. Are there any questions before we get started? Great. So Elizabeth, take it away.
Awesome. Welcome you too. If you guys want to start out, we're going to start with Jane. If you want to start out just giving us a little bit of introduction to who you are, you can use that opportunity to also introduce your platform. And as Devin mentioned, you have 2 minutes.
Hi,
Hi everyone, my name is Jane Meyer and I'm a junior in the college and I'm running for president of the undergraduate assembly. It's very exciting to be here before you all. I've served on the UA for the past 2 years, so I'm the former communications director and the current social justice committee director, and I've loved my time on the UA. I've had a lot of other experiences outside the UA in different student groups as well, in political life, in religious life, in Greek life. But what's so unique about the UA and why I'm so passionate about it is because it has the ability to really bring together all the different communities on campus, and I've gotten to interact and meet so many amazing people through that. I'm running for president because I'm passionate about making Penn a better place. I love Penn, and I know we all love our communities that we have here. A couple things that I hope to focus on next year are sexual assault, bystander intervention trainings, increasing open expression on campus, improving mental wellness, improving Penn Transit, and also improving Penn's relationships with the West Philadelphia community. So again, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited for today's debate.
Hi guys, my name is Abe McConnell. I'm also a junior in the college. I've been on the UA for about 2.5 years, give or take. I served on the budget committee, I served on the social justice committee, I also served on the dining and sustainability and facilities committee, and I worked this year with the budget and finance university trustees. I'd like to take this time a little bit, not just introduce myself, but also introduce my running mate, Bill Big, and talk a little bit about our platform today. We have what we'd like to call an action plan. Action groups. Any student involved in a particular issue of their passion or interest can actually get involved with the UA. Go to the UA, say, hey, I'm interested in financial services, or I'm interested in mental health. Go there, get access to the UA, even if you're not involved necessarily in the electoral politics side of the UA, and then get your interest or concern forwarded directly to the administration. Seats a call to men. A lot of the concerns about sexual assault prevention and awareness, of course, have been focusing increasingly on men. And one of the things that I would love to do with Bill is to enhance the programming that groups such as 1 and 4 do, expanding not just the fraternities, but also beyond to off-campus fraternities, athletics groups, and other affiliated organizations. Technological improvement. The UA and Bill and I would like to improve access to things such as recorded classrooms, as well as access to the Penn mobile app, which came out this past February and January. Informational improvement. Bill and I would like to resuscitate the 2012-2013 system of Penn Help, in which students can use a chat room to ask any question they want of any administrator and have the UA facilitate that concern directly to the top administration. Open to all. I would like to work pending any further conversations with the Minorities Council and any other affiliated group with the enhancement of cultural competency and evaluation programs, not just within Greek life, but also beyond, especially with athletic groups and other affiliated organizations. And navigating Penn, ensuring things such as the new program, International Student Orientation, is accessible and interesting for all international students who are coming, especially from abroad, in order to facilitate their concerns and expand horizons here at Penn. I'll be continuing to talk a little bit about my platform as well as particular interests, and of course I will love to take any questions now and ongoing with it. Thank you guys.
Great, so we're going to begin with a question from the 5B. Over the course of the academic year, with the effectiveness of student financial services coming into question, with SFAB also now functioning to attempt to work against some of the problems low-income and minority students face, what are the potential changes you will propose to the SFAB that will favor both the low-income and minority communities on campus?
Sure. So I'll say this morning I spoke a little bit with the Latino Coalition, and while I haven't been able to reach out to all the 5B, I sent emails and hoping to be able to have a conversation about this particular issue with all of them. Some of the concerns that were mentioned was that, particularly the way that the funding structure works overall, just for getting tuition increases each and every year. We've had for the 7th year in a row a 3.9% increase in tuition. Compound that over 7 years, that's about a 30% increase. So if you were a freshman 4 years ago, now senior, you'd be paying roughly 18 to 19% per year for at the start. What is really a major flaw in terms of the advisory board itself? I believe that right now it doesn't have as much access to the individuals who ultimately make these decisions, which isn't necessarily just the administration, but also the university trustees, in particular the budget and finance committee, the university trustees, where this negotiations occur. I would recommend, or I would also like to work with this advisory board in some way in order to either promote somebody who serves on the advisory board to also take that student seat for next year, or to promote this concern directly to the trustees so they can actually hear this and then put pressure on administration on that front end rather than just the student end. And I also think that having regular meetings with the trustees would
So I think an aspect So this is a new board and still trying to get its footing and figure out its goals for next year. And I think something that really has come to light is the difference between graduate needs in terms of financial aid and undergraduate needs in terms of financial aid. And there needs to be something in the structure of the board that makes these differences clear and make sure that these voices are heard and that the needs of each group are addressed. And so if that means restructuring, through conversations, I think that is definitely something that needs to be addressed because the needs are very different between those two groups. And also just ensuring that there is language and that the recommendations from the advisory board have teeth. It's not just there to talk about problems amongst themselves. The board is there to advocate for change and really ensuring that there are things in place to make sure that this change can happen in the recommendations.
Steven, do you have
Certainly. So I think that, again, the structure of the advisory board is particularly ineffective in certain conditions right now, and that also could be changed as well. Talking a little bit to GAPSA and some of their concerns, there's just not necessarily a lot of baseline knowledge on the graduate side about how undergraduate financial aid works, including some things that we as undergraduates consider to be relatively implicit or things we already take care of. So in addition to creating structure, also continuing to host dialogue and discussions, even bring graduate students into the mix and the picture would be incredibly important.
So before we move to the next question, I know there's some people sitting on the floor. We have some open seats, so you can just take a minute to find one. If you're using a bag to take a seat, take your bag off, please. Make sure everything can fit.
Awesome. So next question. The Faculty Diversity Action Plan has started to affect the landscape of campus thanks to the work of Vice Provost Nita Allen. Many departments are starting to see their first high-level appointments come from minority backgrounds. However, even with the action plan working, particular departments are still dragging their feet when it comes to diversifying their faculty. How would you work with 5B and PQ to ensure that progress within race and gender are made in particularly troubled departments?
Okay, so I think again, it's so important that the Faculty Diversity Action Plan is out in the open because we as students now have something that we can hold the administration to and point to and say this is a commitment and hold them to it. And the 5B has done so much research and has put in so much work as well as PQ and other groups on campus, really to make sure that the needs are being highlighted so that it's easier to kind of fulfill those needs. Moving forward, I think it's important. So my running mate and I, Ray will be heading steering if elected and ensuring that that's a space where we create dialogue and bring in administrators and allow relevant student groups to voice their concerns, especially when it's found out that there are vacancies to be filled, to ensure that we're holding the administrators there in that forum, also using University Council as a forum to hold administrators to their work.
Great. So again, I talked with the Latino Coalition a little bit this morning about some of their concerns, and I'd like to use a little bit of what they brought up as a general example for the approach here. There are concerns really on two ends. One, of course, is making sure that the faculty are really before students sort of relate to them in some ways, either look like them or ultimately have some kind of cultural exposure. There's also something that's a concern on the back end, which is that a lot of faculty who are maybe Latino, maybe African American, have actually been leaving Penn recently. In particular, that seems to be a problem along not just within engineering, which in the case of Latinos only has about 3% of Latino faculty, but just really across the board. And it seems that a lot of these faculty members are dissatisfied with the way that they're currently being treated when it comes to equity and access here at Penn. So I recommend, and really working with UMC members of the faculty, I really ask a lot of these faculty who are actually considering leaving, what are some of the concerns that they really have, and what are some of the suggestions that the UA could bring to things like the University Council, the administration, and in the case of engineering, what they're reaching out to is actually, again, the university trustees. This is just a way to sort of change the perception that a lot of faculty have as well, and make sure that they can work with students.
Good. Okay.
All right, so the next set of questions comes from Engineering Council. The first question is that there is a lack of involvement of engineering students in all branches of student government. What can you do yourself to improve the participation of engineering students in student government in order to better establish representation of our student body?
So one of the things that's really interesting coming into the UA right now is the fact that we have started up Penn, but outside of just Penn Mobile, we've also made a huge transition and what I argue is a sea change into a lot of the computer sciences and other related coding fields. And so there's actually, I see a sort of technological resource and availability for new UA members to come into the fold who have particular technical competencies. For example, we need somebody as a secretary in the UA who can relate directly to the Penn Labs advisory board in order to have that particular competency and skill set to not just improve Penn Mobile, but also come up with other technological developments. And the platform I'm proposing, this also includes things such as being able to create a new Penn Health chat service, as well as being able to figure out a way to have recorded classrooms and integrated interface systems a la the Salesforce. I think that those are ultimately opportunities for engineering students to get passionate behind, not just on the basis of representing their students, but also representing their own interests and their own things that you can relate to their majors and minors.
So I'm very passionate about diversity of all sorts in terms of issues that are discussed before the UA, because we are all students at Penn, but we do come from different backgrounds and we do different things, and the UA should be serving all of us. In terms of engineering students, I think it's really important that we liaise with the different kind of groups that are within engineering, advisory boards there, and they can help bring issues that are specific to the engineering school to the UA, because again, we have access to different administrators, or maybe we have experience on past projects that can really inform some of the work that's being done there and amplify its effects and potentially speed its effects. So increasing dialogue with engineering students, especially groups that work on a daily, weekly basis to improve the lives of engineering students and their academic experience, working with them because they're the experts on the issue there.
Just as a follow-up as well, I'd say there's a lot of room for engineering students when it comes to the intersectionality of engineering with other issues. So whether that's the Engineering Students Advisory Board or maybe Black engineers, getting engineers to be involved and passionate about other issues, maybe of cultural or gender representation in engineering, things along those lines, liaising with them and also bringing them into the fold when it comes to these other issues that are rapidly and usually very thoroughly discussed in the UA. We see a lot of opportunity there and a lot of passion result as well.
Great. So the second question from the Engineering Council is, recruitment tends to be a very stressful season for undergraduates. The UA has focused a lot this past year on alleviating mental health issues. Recruitment is definitely one of the major sources of stress at Penn, especially for students who are still looking for internships in mid. What are some of the steps that you believe the UA can take to alleviate this problem?
So the issue of mental health and mental wellness on campus is very multifaceted, and there's no panacea to the problems that students face here on campus. The approach that Ray and I hope to take is one that is engaging students in peer support, and I think this can be particularly relevant in times of recruiting stresses, because students can really sympathize with what's going on there. The Penn Benjamins program was recently introduced, and they're going to have kind of their first full-fledged semester of programming in the fall, and they're students who are trained by CAPS to be peer support and peer advisors, and I think it's students who are tuned into the waxing and waning periods of stress that we do have as undergraduates, and really tapping into that network and making sure they're on at the right time is really important.
So I would say that I've been through this. I just went through this a few weeks ago. I tried to fly out to California, and I got snowed out and lost out on the internship on the basis of the fact that Philadelphia weather isn't great. So I was under a lot of pressure. Also, have kind of felt the pressure ongoing when it comes to internships and things along those lines. I would say one of the things that really helped me is reaching out to career counseling. And I think that one of the things that UA can do in conjunction with the administration is to promote career counseling, not just as an option for individuals who really don't know what they're doing at all, but also for individuals that have a particular focus in their careers, with some advice, some feedback, and maybe even some personal growth when it comes to the internship selection process and whether or not they're being accepted, rejected, et cetera. I also spoke with a representative of Hillel this morning, and he talked a lot about trying to implement a peer mentoring program that's really just face-to-face within different organizations on campus. I think that's something that's really important to talk about even from a career internship angle, not only because a lot of people have had experience, but also because it just helps to have a human face in the picture when you're really under the gun for a lot of stress. That's something that the UA can help emphasize in conjunction with other mental health resources.
Yeah, just to really sum up, we are all students, we're all experiencing different kinds of stress, and of course that does come with an undergraduate experience, but it should, never reach a level where it's impairing anything that you do in your life. And it's really important that the UA is there to disseminate information about all the different resources, for example, the wellness guide, which I had a part in creating and disseminating, to ensure students have the resources to get the help they need.
Great, and so our final set of prepared questions comes from the Assembly of International Students. The first question is, what are some of your ideas to make international students more integrated on campus? And what do you see as the main needs of international students not currently met?
Okay, so I had a great conversation with AIS earlier today. I talked a little bit about one of the programs that the UA initially sponsored that is ongoing, which is of course reinstating the international student, or NSO variation for international students, which is ISO. Back in 2008, it used to be a 4-day program. It used to be very developed, and now it's been either had funding cuts along those lines, and as a result, it's really starting to start up again. The UA has actually provided funding for it, but the administration has sort of backlogged a little bit, so providing continuing pressure on the administration and also making sure this is something that's really available to international students is a priority of mine and Bill's. The second thing as well is the implementation and the building of Perry Wohlthaus offers a lot of new opportunities for international students. There's a possibility of actually having an international student resource office even move to Perry Wohlthaus, and that's something that I would also definitely advocate for as a more centralized location for opportunities for international students to have a dialogue, but also reach out to particular resources and particular objectives that the Perry Wohlthaus considers integral to its mission.
So a project I really think gets to the heart of this matter is one that Daniel Kahana has actually been spearheading, the International Student Buddy System, which aims to pair domestic students with international students to, help spur friendships that might not otherwise occur, but that are really beneficial for the campus community and for the individuals involved. So I think that's an example of a great project that the UA is in the process of implementing that can really help integrate international students. Also, a project that's going on in Social Justice Committee that I hope to see expanded next year is working with the AIS to make sure that resources for international students are very accessible. Opening a bank account, getting a cell phone, these things are very difficult for international students once they come here, and easing that early transition process will make integration into the broader Penn community much more seamless and easy.
I would say just adding a little bit to that, I spoke with Executive Vice President Craig Farmerly not too long ago, and he came up with this interesting point, which is that there's a lot of international students who might hail from individuals that may hail from countries in which, for example, the police aren't necessarily trusted, or there are other things that we here in America take for granted that are actually really critical in order to have a great experience at Penn. And so I would recommend even, in the ISO program, things along with international students, programs and departments that relate to how to deal with EPS, how to deal with administration and the way that academics work here in the States versus other countries.
Okay, and the final question is, what do you believe are the next steps to making the extended international student orientation a reality?
So the next steps here are, we're kind of now getting into the nitty-gritty, the logistical side of things. We need to find out exactly how much does it cost to have students move in a day or two early. Because once we find out, we'll be able to figure out an exact figure to ask of administrators to put in to pay for this extended housing. So that's the next thing that needs to be done. It's kind of a very specific step, but once we crunch the numbers, we'll have a clear plan of action and a clear ask of administrators.
I agree with Jane. I think that the housing concern is a particular consideration and really trying to get some direct numbers from administrators because, there's some disparities right now in the numbers that we're being given. I'd also say there's another major thing too, which is that although the UA has already provided funding for ISO this year, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen because the administration hasn't come to the conclusion yet of what exactly it's going to look like, which means that students coming next year might not receive information in May as to whether or not it's actually going to be happening. And so I'd say that even prior to getting costs and considerations underway, I would also say we need to work with the administration and kind of get the pressure on a little bit to see whether or not they're able to come up with a full plan to advertise by May so that next year's class can actually participate.
Jane?
Just again to reiterate, this expanding international NSO is really important to the seamless integration, and sometimes during the summer things can get lost in the shuffle, but this is definitely something that the UA as a whole is very passionate about, and we're excited to advocate for.
Awesome, so we're gonna move into general questions from the audience. Devin will be keeping a queue, so the best thing for you to do is raise your hand. Do you have any questions to begin with?
Also, there's a bunch of people sitting. We have some chairs here and here, so try to fill in. You can go ahead now. We'll take like a 30-second break so you can move over. Everyone's sitting down. If you'd like to actually sit. Yeah, we have seats down here. Okay, so yes, raise your hand if you'd like to be on the queue with priority. And in general, just again, all questions need to be phrased so that both candidates can answer them. And Elizabeth and I will confer if there are any questions we don't believe meet this criteria. So raise your hand. Hi. I don't know most of your names, so you might be referring to what you're wearing in order to call on you. Keep your hand up until. Okay, great. Got everyone? And if you have any questions that come up while we're taking these questions, feel free to put your hand up at any time and I'll take your name for the queue. So the first question is to the person that's in the center in the red. Go ahead, you can ask your question.
I want to know what experience both of you have working directly with the administration, specifically, I'm not in the UA, so I don't know specifics, but ended up in the board of trustees, because it seems to me, my dad is a trustee at Tufts University, and it seems to me that those are the people who have a lot of power to make changes. And being able to talk with them and having connections with them seems really important, so I want to know what experience we both have.
So Aiden, you're first.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I'll just take trustees and then administration. I currently serve on the budget finance committee of the university trustees, and sit on the standing committee in some various forms as well. A lot of what that's meant in the past year really is I've had to talk with the trustees who do a lot of direct programming and direct planning for the $6 billion operating budget. So that includes, such luminaries as Andrea Mitchell, but it also includes individuals who are a little lesser known, but also very passionate about the interest from a monetary perspective. That grants me a little bit of leeway when it comes to talking to the upper echelon trustees and the executive vice president, Greg Carnrolli, when it comes to both capital project plans, so the construction of the Perry House, as well as when it comes to particular student concerns such as the fossil fuel divestment that occurred recently. On the administrative level, I've worked with all sorts of individuals, Kurt Zuma, Valcade, again, as I mentioned, Craig Carnrolli, and in particular, some of the projects I've had the pleasure of working with include subsidization of funding for EMTs. It used to cost $1,000 to be part of MERD. Now we have subsidization in place, which lowers the cost, and other similar experiences as well.
Jane?
So as I said at the beginning of the debate, for the past 2 years, I have served on cabinet of the UA, and a part of that job is attending meetings about once a week with various administrators across campus. So at this point, I have met multiple times with various administrators, including Valcade, including Amy Gutman, Craig Carnrolli, Andy Binns, all of these different administrators I have had contact with through these cabinet meetings. In particular, I serve on the UA Open Expression Committee, so I've worked with Professor Stefanos Vivas, and I've also been working a lot with Jess Mertz, the new Central Prevention and Education Administrator. It's a new position, and we have a great partnership, and we really see some tangible projects come out of that partnership, and I'm really proud of that relationship and the work.
I guess also just add a few other things, like I work a lot with Fox leadership and some of their programming and planning, as well as some of the governmental affairs and other things that they do as well, so that includes guys like Chuck Boucher. I'd say overall, my general experience with trustees and administration has been that in order for the students to make change, you have to take a two-pronged approach in order to best accommodate the process. Discussion with administration, and if possible, and if they're interested, also talking to the trustees a bit to see if they have an interest and concern, because the administration will be responsive to the students and the trustees.
Elizabeth's gonna chime the rest of the way. So next is the person in the gray sweater in the back. There. Yes.
Okay, so curbing sexual assault on campus has become like a lot more part of the spotlight as it should be with different student groups as well as faculty and administration. But a lot of times the conversations and the sort of actions that are taken leave out the voices of women of color and queer women. And so I want to know, in terms of any initiatives that you would each propose during your term to deal with sexual assault on campus, how you would make sure that those voices were included with the rest of campus.
Jane, you're first.
So this is an issue that I'm particularly passionate about and have worked on this entire year with Travis Tringle-Decker, who's on the Social Justice Committee. It's implementing sexual assault bystander intervention trainings and that are peer-led. And so this aspect of being peer-led, we recognize the fact that, in order for a message to really resonate, you have to a certain extent, identify with the person who's talking to you, or feel comfortable with the person who's presenting this information. And so a large part of that has been the establishment of the Sexual Assault Prevention Student Advisory Board, which has individuals from many different backgrounds and many different experiences at Penn, where they're hearing about all these initiatives that we're working on in terms of PAVE, the Penn Anti-Violence Educator Program, and disseminating the information to their constituent groups and their communities to ensure that we're having valid representation of trainers and that this information is reaching all quarters of campus.
This is a very difficult question for me because in many ways, I have not had all the experiences and certainly not the experiences of a woman of color with regards to the dialogue that's occurring on campus. One of the reasons why my campaign promotes a call to men is because I've identified that as white heterosexual male who does live in a fraternity, I can play my game and be a good contributor while still not necessarily stepping on anybody else's toes or anybody else's toes. However, one of the things that I really love to see, one of the reasons I propose working, especially for issues of sexual assault, is right now I do worry that some of the sexual assault prevention services being provided still do discount a lot of voices. And I would particularly love and encourage to see a working group of women of color working on sexual assault to provide a white paper or some kind of resolution directly to the UA so we can actually forward that on to Craig Carnevale. Because the reality situation is that whereas I might not always be in the capacity to understand that situation, there are certainly ways to reach out to people that matter most and really do understand that capacity. Again, it's about approaching with some humility and some respect, but also about making sure that those voices are truly represented.
Jane, your response.
So I really do appreciate Aiden's suggestion that we kind of dive a little deeper into the needs of these different communities and potentially expand upon the already existing sexual assault prevention student advisory group and maybe bring on some more voices or ask them to go back to their constituent groups and come back with some specific action items or concerns so that our next meeting can be productive and start some new different conversations.
Next, blue t-shirt, third row. Yep.
What are each of your positions on fossil fuel divestment at Penn, specifically on the proposal voted on by the student body in the recent referendum?
So I'd like to start out with two things. From a personal perspective, I am actually opposed to divestment for a lot of different considerations. I do believe that the ultimate authority to decide that does still lie with the Office of Investments of the University of Pennsylvania. That being said, there's also a few other frustrations that I've had with the way that administration currently works. One, the fossil fuel divestment was ultimately a popular referendum supported by a lot of students, and yet there was really no immediate reaction from the trustees, especially in the Budget and Finance Committee. One of the things I'd like to do is actually be able to provide some kind of online service or suggestion to individuals who are creating a popular referendum to directly understand how the next steps are taken in order to get it to the trustees. And while again, I personally don't see divestment necessarily as the biggest issue on campus, other students very much do. In my capacity as a UA president, that is very much the representative course I want to take, and I very much want to be able to see these future initiatives actually be considered by the trustees in a holistic manner and actually taken seriously.
And so I want to echo again some of Aiden's sentiments, just the importance of the student voice. And I think it was a really exciting week on campus to see Fossil Free Penn setting up all those different booths and students voting. And I would talk to people about it, and everyone has voted, and it was great. Because sometimes people with student government elections, people are like, you really didn't really vote, and you really got to persuade them. But people were very excited to vote for the divestment investment bill, and I was excited to vote for it as well. And again, it's important now that the trustees do take into account the student voice. Yes, it's ultimately their decision, but I want to make sure that they are recognizing how significant this is, that the Penn undergraduates have spoken, and truly take that viewpoint into account.
Ian, your response?
I would just say as well that the issue of referenda goes beyond just divestment as well. I do envision and do see a lot of really prominent and really great activism on campus. And I would love to see a broader and better connection of the administration and the trustees. Anything from the fossil fuel divestment to earlier tobacco divestment, all the way to even the Black Lives Matter campaign. I'd love to be able to bridge that gap in some ways and bring it directly to the administration.
Next question is from the third row in the classes.
What is the biggest challenge that you foresee while potentially being president? How do you intend to overcome that?
All right, Lizzie and Jane.
Well, a challenge for me, I think, was having not necessarily served on exec before. So I did mention in the past 2 years I have been on cabinet and have that experience, but I haven't necessarily served on the executive board. And so there's a certain level of just how those exec meetings are run and responsibilities that I'll have to learn. But I have faith in, the previous president and vice president, mentors of mine, who will be able to show me the ropes, and I'll be able to hit the ground running more or less.
I'd say it's probably going to be a little bit of a combination of interpersonal relationships and just the fact that the UA president has to juggle so many balls that it's almost impossible to manage without the exec. So I had that opportunity to talk to our current exec, and they basically said, we need to have a good team, we need to line it up in some ways, because a lot of times what's going to happen is you might have the 5B, and you might have a bunch of other student groups, and then you might have 10 different administrators all trying to focus on something like, for example, with the financial services advisory board situation, which is prone to conflict because everybody feels passionate about it. So the biggest challenge as president is how do you mediate those discussions so that everybody's voice is heard, everybody's passion kind of comes together, while at the same time it's also very productive and you don't necessarily hit any roadblocks along the way. And that's something that is almost inevitable by nature of the way that Penn works. It's very decentralized, but in many other ways, it's also a lesson in self-reflection and being able to understand how you as an individual can just be a good mediator and be somebody who really understands and can understand the capacities of other individuals.
And just another point too, it's kind of crazy to think you're president of the student body of 10,000 undergraduates, and that's a really big responsibility, a responsibility that I would take very seriously. And just every single action that I would take as president, I have to weigh the needs of all of my peers, and that's a big job, but one I'm looking forward to.
Next question is right here. Third row.
And again, thank you. So my question is a little bit more general. It's about really the theme of solving the symptoms versus solving the causes of those symptoms. So for example, with the OCR point, perhaps expanding mental wellness resources can really assist with stress. However, it might not actually solve the problem that's causing that stress. Perhaps providing a practical guideline or blueprint for someone who's, let's say, interested in a career in consulting or something. Perhaps earlier in that student's career path, maybe the beginning of sophomore year, you might prepare them such that when they do hit OCR, they can be prepared for that, they're prepped for that, instead of being taken completely out of hand by the whole situation. So really, my question is about solving the symptoms versus solving problems, and just delving into old forms versus more teetering around the edges.
So yeah, can I just ask you to clarify what your question is?
Yeah, so to put it simply, how would you guys really enact bold reforms to solve the symptoms of the problems rather than just cutting around the edges?
Do you still have clarification?
Of mental health, of
Yeah,
any
like for
problem in
example,
general.
with the OCR, for example.
So let's jump into responses.
All right, Eden.
So, yeah, I mean, again, well, mental health is multifaceted, and it's sometimes always hard to come up with something on the front end rather than the back end. I really think that promoting mentorship programs on a more localized level, so again, when I talked to Helen for a little bit today, or some of the retreat ideas, even these cultural competency retreats, or anything along those lines could continue to have some kind of ongoing dialogue about this individualized support. That might actually get somebody in the right mentality to say that they have a support base at Penn, so they don't have to worry about falling back on, something that might not be as healthy. There's also the possibility, and this is something that you guys explored before, of relieving some stress and pressure on the front end academically. That might be through kind of revising grading policies. For example, uniform grading across the school is something that SKU's actually proposed that might go a long way to relieving certain stress pressures points in different schools. And as well as perhaps opening up access to kind of student support groups or student discussion groups that really don't talk about so much mental health issues, but rather just how to have
So an aspect of kind of alleviating before a problem really starts, some of the stress is actually it's pretty exciting. The college is trying to revamp their peer advising system. So again, this idea of peers helping peers, being there to advise, to mentor, and to answer questions that, if unanswered, can cause a lot of anxiety. I think another proactive approach to some of these stresses that students do face on a daily basis is another student-led project that I've heard that Dana Kahana and Natalie Hernandez brought to fruition, the yoga day. So that's like a very specific example, but that was free yoga, to provide relaxation, stress reduction to the student body. And I think maybe encouraging other student groups to have events like that, potentially with UA guidance, is another proactive approach to solving some of these problems.
Thank you.
I think as well that, hopefully these groups will speak in this group sometime later, but groups like Active Minds, Accept, which is a body image movement here at Penn, even the Consciousness Society or Consciousness Squad, which focuses on things like the yoga, mental health and wellness things, could provide some great benefit in trying to understand how we as students, we're all mostly type-A students here, we pressure ourselves a lot. How do we as students sort of channel that pressure in more productive ways? And again, that's a lot of dialogue, just promoting these movements and seeing a bigger activity across the campus, that might be rewritten movement, et cetera.
Next is Bill.
My name is Bill Ding, and I'm the running mate of Peyton. My question is pretty general. When I go out and collect votes, I found the student body, they don't know what UA is or what UA does. This is pretty embarrassing for us. They know nothing. This is real. Like, we go out and collect votes, that's what happened. So they don't know what UA is or what UA does. They know SPAC, they know Classboard. How are you going to bridge the gap between UA and the student body? So the next time when I go out, possibly not me because I'm graduating. So some of you guys going out and collect votes, they will know what UA is and what UA does.
Great. Well, this is something that I am really passionate about as a former communications director. I'm thinking of creative ways to connect with the student body and really make projects that are already relevant to students, but making students realize that and saying, look at this amazing thing, take advantage of this service. It is very important. Part of what I helped establish as communications director was the comm team. So if you saw this year, we're more active on social media under the direction of Robin, our current communications director. We're more active on social media, trying to speak in a student voice and be relevant. I think what is key moving forward is working with student groups on projects, not just kind of being insular and, UA taking a project, but truly working with student groups because that's how we'll reach the broader student body and make sure we're working on projects that are relevant to students. And also working with the NEC, who part of their job is to educate the student body about student government. Potentially there's some cool areas of collaboration.
Like Jane, I see a lot of potential in the marketing side, in particular, also collaboration with NEC. I'd also say from a project perspective, one of the things I've seen is that the same 200 people so much or so forth tend to interact with the UA each and every year, but how do you reach the other 9,800 undergraduates at Penn? Well, you focus on sort of the projects that don't seem like little things, but are actually pretty important. For example, when I was getting and collecting votes, Phil and I found that apparently there's a washing machine and laundry machine epidemic at Penn, where none of them are working, or there's black spore mold growing in some of them, and that seems to be across all of the college houses, especially for freshmen. Being able to talk and being able to be the the service that ultimately brings an end to black spore mold in the laundry room is going to get the student body to like you a little more. Same thing also with the idea about transferability of meal swipes. The university recently came out with a program in which you can exchange meal swipes, or what I would argue is basically a rip-off, about $10 less than the actual value of the meal swipe. Being able to work on that project and get the administration to change that up would also get the UA very much involved.
And I think this too is another part where having a diverse set of student government representatives is really important, because then they can relay information back to their respective communities, and it's a two-way street, and bring ideas to the UA. Our associate member program is a great way to do this as well, where someone doesn't have to be elected to do good work on the UA. If you're passionate about an issue, you think it affects the student body or a particular subset of the student body, you can come and work on that.
So we have 2 people left on the queue, and we're gonna cap it after those 2 people ask their questions. So next question is for the person in the gray shirt, right, the striped shirt right there.
What are your thoughts about the university's relationship to and responsibility to local Philadelphia communities, and what specific things have you done to foster university community?
So I would say, this is a little bit outside my context in the UA, but I'm working with Student Action and Student Thinking Action they call Engage, which focuses a lot on Philadelphia, and in particular, focusing on financial literacy concerns. One of the obligations that I think the university has, which actually addressed a lot, is the fact that if we're really intent on bringing in Philadelphia residents to campus, we need to make sure that it's affordable, not just from a financial aid perspective, but also from loans. There's a payday loan epidemic in a lot of, especially African American Latino communities in Philadelphia, where their families are taking out things that are ultimately unsustainable for them to pay. And I think that maybe working with somebody like Professor Lee White, who actually focuses on advising people in Philadelphia on this, is a duty that Penn could possibly deliver. There's other things as well. I think that Penn in the past has had a pretty checkered history with the university. I used to see stickers on Locust Walk that talk a lot about the past community here, the fact that the building we're currently living and we're currently in right now needs to be a vibrant community. And being able to work with individuals to understand their history and also ways to resolve that history.
So it's undeniable the university does have a responsibility to give back to the West Philadelphia community, the greater Philadelphia community, and to be a good neighbor. On a personal level, for the past 5 semesters, I've tutored at the Sayre High School in West Philadelphia, which is just a really good way of giving back and also just getting a lot of perspective and doing what I can to ensure that my university is having a positive impact in the West Philadelphia community. Something that I think can really hone our impact is, there's a lot of different philanthropic opportunities on campus, especially in terms of different tutoring programs, a lot of stuff the Netter Center does, Civic House does, and I know the Civic House is going under restructuring and kind of looking into all of these different outlets, but truly organizing them so that it's easier for students' talents to align with the different opportunities to give back to the West Philadelphia community, I think can be really impactful and amplify our impact.
I would just sort of add to the way that the university is situated in off campus. We are the largest employer in the city and by far, I think the largest single property both within the campus as well as all our medical facilities. There's something to speak of when it comes to paying property taxes. I know pilots has been a concern, and I actually would hope to work with the trustees, work with the administration, to put pressure for something beyond just pilots, focusing on just the grant education, making more utilizing University of Pennsylvania's current way to talk to the city council. Particularly Congresswoman Blackwell, to talk a little bit about what other ways the university can contribute from a financial stability point for education.
Okay, so this is the last question for today. It goes to in the back.
Okay, so I know earlier you were mentioning international students coming and having to get acclimated with different things on campus, and you mentioned that some might not be used to trusting the police force in the country that they're from. But I know there's a large constituency of students here that don't trust the police. So is there anything that you each would be looking at in terms of developing or redeveloping relationships between campus and Philadelphia police with the students here?
So this is a conversation that, in part I had with Denzel, Moja, and conversations that I've had with Ray as well. These relationships that can be very contentious sometimes, and what is very important, both sides understanding each other and understanding how to improve that relationship. And I think open dialogue is really important, and transparency. So transparency in policing methods, like making that known and understanding how West Philadelphia Police and Campus Police, their regulations and why they're doing certain things, and making sure students have that information and have the opportunity to voice concerns about that.
So, my sophomore year, I served on the Department of Public Safety Advisory Board, working with Marine Rush, Captain Steele, Charles Anderson, individuals like that. I have to say that this year I was somewhat frustrated and a little alarmed when things like, for example, zip tying, somebody to a post in order to basically detain them was not only demeaning but also outside. I think that there's room for the UA through its advocacy on the advisory board to continue pushing for protocol enhancements to make sure that a lot of the police actually hold up that bar, particularly when it comes to being sensitive to the community around them and not being so demeaning. I think the other aspect as well is that the relationship that DPS has with the Philadelphia Police is actually very beneficial in a lot of ways because the Department of Public Safety sort of takes this area and maintains that local police often interact off campus, but in exchange for that, the Department of Public Safety also has a lot of interest in Philadelphia Police. One of the things I spoke with Marine Rush very briefly at one time was getting the Philadelphia Police to participate in the camcorders and recording the camera for police officers to enhance accountability mechanisms.
So again, I think talking with individual groups who are very affected by these issues is important, and to understand exactly what their needs as a community are, and then going forward and advocating for these needs, because I won't necessarily know through personal experience exactly what needs to be changed, and I think it's so important that we allow different communities to speak for themselves and for what they need, and then the UA is here to help bring those ideas into action.
So that's the end of questions that we have for today. Additionally, if you have another question you didn't get to ask and would like to ask of the candidates, we will have another in-person debate on Tuesday. That will also include a separate debate for vice presidential candidates. And that'll be Tuesday at 7 p.m. in Starbucks under Commons. So definitely make sure you make it to that to ask additional questions and hear more from your candidates and the vice presidential candidates. So we're now going to go into closing statements. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to give a closing statement. And Jane went first on the opening statement, so Aiden, you can go first on the closing statement.
Sure. So again, thank you guys so much for coming to the first debate. Pleasure hearing from your questions and concerns. If you want to reach out to me, my email is aidan@sasci.edu. Again, remember the action plan, our focus on engaging action groups to call men to making sure that campus is accessible to all, making sure that students can navigate it and thoroughly understand the process, especially as freshmen and sophomores. Again, I'd also ask that you guys, especially considering the fact that Jane and I are both doing a pretty good job in the UA over the past few years, things along those lines, really think about any substantive issues that really come to mind over the next few days. And if you can, be sure to ask those questions and make sure that you relate to us in some way. We'd love to hear your concerns. We'd love to hear your suggestions. And we're hoping to get you guys further involved.
Part of why I love being a student so much at Penn is the different communities I found. So I thank all of you for coming out and speaking on behalf of your different communities and your student groups, because ultimately we'll be representing your interests and your voice is so important. So thank you for that. Moving forward, I want to, again, just reiterate, focus on sexual assault prevention, mental wellness, open expression, being a better neighbor in the West Philadelphia community, and improving Penn Transit, which we didn't talk about, so you could talk to me about it after if you want. But what I'm also really passionate about is spurring to action the different members of the UA that will be elected, because everyone comes to the table with their own interests, and I can't do it all. Ray and I can't do it all. We need an amazing UA who feels empowered to take action, to work on tangible projects, and to see them through. And I really think that the passion that I have for the UA, the student body, can help in that process, and I'm so excited for next year.
Well, thank you all for coming to our debate. We really appreciate you taking the time. like to thank the candidates for coming, as well as Quad, the members of Quad who helped in this debate. So after we're going to meet the endorsers, we open you all in Having High Street, whether you're an endorser or not. Please feel free to mingle with the candidates and ask them if you're one of those options.
So additionally, we have name tags here, and everyone should grab one, no matter who you are. Just write your name, and if you're affiliated with an organization or running for a position, just make sure you write that
I will eat all that.